My father's fist slammed against the dining table so hard that the wine glasses rattled. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot, silencing everything except my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. His face was red veins bulging at his temples as he pointed his finger directly at me. Either you give up that room or you get the hell out of this house right now. Who do you think you are clinging here like some kind of parasite? Across the table, my younger sister Morgana leaned back in her chair with a smirk playing on her glossy lips. She examined her manicured nails with theatrical disinterest before adding her own poisoned dart. I mean, seriously, what do you even need all that space for? Just to keep your boring spreadsheets. She laughed that tinkling, dismissive sound I had heard 1,000 times before. My mother nodded along her smile saccharine and false, as she chimed in about how Morgana's influencer career was about to explode, how she needed a proper studio, how it was time for me to be reasonable and think about the family. I sat there, fork halfway to my mouth, a piece of roast beef still on the tines. The meat was perfectly cooked tender and seasoned just right, but it suddenly tasted like ash. I chewed slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch out between us. Then something shifted inside me, something final and irrevocable. I felt the corner of my mouth twitch upward in a smile that must have looked strange because my father's expression flickered with uncertainty for just a moment. I swallowed, set down my fork with careful precision, and pushed back my chair. The scraping sound against the hardwood floor was louder than it needed to be. I stood up, smoothed down my sweater, and looked at each of them in turn. My father still huffing with righteous indignation. My mother that fake concern painted on her face. Morgana already mentally redecorating my room. And then there was Ethan, my younger brother, sitting at the end of the table with worry written all over his face. The only one who looked like he actually cared what happened to me. I understand, I said, my voice steady and calm. Next Sunday, I'll have your answer. Then I turned and walked out of that dining room with my back straight and my head held high, leaving behind their shocked faces and the half-eaten dinner that had become my last meal in that house as the daughter who would take whatever they dished out. If you're enjoying this story of standing up to toxic family dynamics, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more stories of people finding their power, and drop a comment below telling me what you would have done in this situation. Now let me take you back to where this all really began. My story doesn't start with that dinner. It starts much earlier in the small moments that accumulate like drops of water eventually carving through stone. I had always been the responsible one, the one who didn't cause trouble, who studied hard, who understood that my role in this family was to be invisible unless I was being useful. Morgana, 3 years younger than me, had been the golden child from the moment she could walk. She had my mother's delicate features and blonde hair, while I had inherited my father's darker coloring and stronger build. From early on, I understood that beauty and charm were currency in the Thorne household, and I was bankrupt in both. I was 8 years old the first time I truly understood my place in the family hierarchy. It was Christmas morning, and we were opening presents around the tree. Morgana, only 5 at the time, had received a mountain of gifts. A new bicycle with streamers on the handlebars, an American Girl doll with an entire wardrobe, art supplies, games books. The pile for her was so large it took up half the space under the tree. My pile consisted of 3 boxes, practical clothes, school supplies, and a dictionary. When I had looked up with what must have been disappointment on my face, my father had said, "You're the smart one, Alexis. You don't need toys. You need tools for your future." Morgana had ridden her new bike in circles in the driveway, while I sat in my room reading the dictionary, trying to convince myself that words were better than toys anyway. That pattern repeated itself year after year. Morgana got dance lessons, acting classes, modeling workshops. I got tutoring in math and science because those were practical. When Morgana wanted to go to expensive summer camps focused on performing arts, they found the money. When I wanted to attend a coding camp that cost half as much, I was told we couldn't afford it and that I should get a summer job instead. So I did. At 13, I was mowing lawns and babysitting while Morgana was learning how to walk a runway. The incident that truly crystallized my resolve happened when I was 14. I had been saving for 8 months, doing every odd job I could find in our neighborhood. I walked dogs, raked leaves, shoveled snow, tutored younger kids in math. Every dollar went into a shoebox hidden under my bed. I had saved $847, and I was so proud of that number. I had earned it. It was mine. I was going to buy a laptop, a nice one that I could use for school and for the small web design projects I had started taking on through a teacher's referral. I remember the exact moment I lost it all. It was a Saturday afternoon in October. I had just come home from the library where I had been researching different laptop models, comparing specs and prices. I walked into my room and immediately knew something was wrong. My bed had been moved slightly. The shoebox was on my desk empty. My mother was sitting on my bed waiting for me with that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "Alexis, sweetheart, sit down," she had said, patting the space beside her. I remained standing, staring at the empty shoebox. "Your sister had an opportunity come up. A photographer wants to build her portfolio, but she needs professional equipment, a good camera, lighting, editing software. It's expensive, but it's an investment in her future. I knew you'd understand. You're always so mature about these things." I felt something crack inside my chest. "That was my money," I said, my voice small and trembling. "I earned it. I was going to buy a laptop for school." "And you will eventually," my mother said, standing up and smoothing her skirt. "But right now, your sister needs this more than you need a fancy computer. You can use the family computer in the den. This is what families do, Alexis. We help each other. Your sister's success will benefit all of us someday." She left the room, taking the empty shoebox with her. I sat on my bed for a long time that day, staring at the wall. I didn't cry. Something harder and colder had formed in my chest where the crack had been. That night, lying in the dark, I made myself a promise. I would never depend on them again. Not for money, not for support, not for anything. I would build something they couldn't touch, couldn't take, couldn't dismiss. And I would do it so quietly, so carefully, that they wouldn't even know it was happening until it was too late to stop me. The next Monday, I opened my first real bank account at a branch near my school, one my parents would never think to check. I started being even more strategic about the jobs I took. I learned basic bookkeeping by reading library books and watching YouTube videos on the school computers. By the time I was 15, I was managing social media accounts for 3 local businesses getting paid under the table. By 16, I had taught myself enough about investing to start putting small amounts into index funds. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, noticed my interest and connected me with a local financial advisor who took me under her wing, teaching me about money management, tax strategies, and business formation. High school was a blur of AP classes during the day and client work at night. I ate lunch in the computer lab building spreadsheets and financial models while my classmates gossiped about weekend parties. I turned down invitations to school dances because I was usually working. My parents thought I was just antisocial and studious. They had no idea I was building a business. Meanwhile, Morgana was living a completely different life. She went to a private high school focused on the arts, paid for with money my parents borrowed against their retirement. She had professional headshots taken quarterly. She went to New York twice a year for networking opportunities that consisted mainly of expensive dinners and shopping trips. When Instagram became popular, she dove in headfirst, and my parents hired a social media consultant to help her grow her following. That consultant cost $3,000 a month. I know because I saw the credit card statements years later. The summer before my senior year of high school, everything came to a head in a way I hadn't anticipated. I had won a scholarship to attend a week-long entrepreneurship program at a nearby university. It was fully funded, including room and board, and it was an incredible opportunity. The program culminated in a pitch competition where the winner would receive $5,000 in seed funding and mentorship from successful business owners. I had been working on my pitch for weeks, a financial literacy consulting service targeting small business owners who couldn't afford traditional accounting firms. I told my parents about it at dinner 2 weeks before the program started. "That's nice, dear," my mother had said, barely looking up from her phone where she was reviewing Morgana's latest Instagram post. "Make sure you're back by the end of the week. We have plans." "What plans?" I asked, confused. The program ended on a Saturday afternoon. I would be back by evening. "Your sister's birthday party," Morgana announced, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "It's going to be huge, like influencer level huge. We're renting out the entire back room at Bellissimo, and Mom hired a photographer and videographer. Everyone who's anyone will be there. That's Sunday, I pointed out. I'll be back Saturday night. I can help set up Sunday morning. My father finally looked up from his newspaper. The program is all week. You'll be gone for a full week. Yes, but it's an amazing opportunity. If I win the pitch competition, I could get funding to start my own business. Absolutely not, he said, returning to his paper. Your sister needs help preparing for her party. She has gift bags to assemble, decorations to plan. You need to be here. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline that never came. Dad, this is a scholarship program at the university. It's for my future. Morgana can assemble gift bags without me. Don't be selfish, Alexis, my mother chimed in. Your sister's 18th birthday only happens once. Your little business project can wait. There will be other programs. There wouldn't be other programs. This was a competitive scholarship. I had beaten out 200 other applicants, but I could see in their faces that none of that mattered. Morgana's birthday party, an event that would be forgotten within a week, was more important than my future. I went to my room, closed the door, and made a decision. I was going to that program. I would face whatever consequences came after, but I was going. I called Mrs. Patterson and explained the situation. She was furious on my behalf and offered to speak to my parents. I declined. Instead, I asked if I could list her as my emergency contact for the program. She agreed immediately. The morning I left for the program, I got up at dawn and left a note on the kitchen table. Gone to the entrepreneurship program. Will be back Saturday night. Congratulations, Morgana, on your birthday. I turned off my phone and took a bus to the university. Those 5 days changed my life. I was surrounded by people who took business seriously, who understood the language of profit margins and market analysis and scalable models. I refined my pitch with help from mentors who had built multi-million-dollar companies. I networked with other students who would become my first real professional contacts. And on Saturday afternoon, I stood in front of a panel of judges and pitched my financial consulting business with every ounce of confidence I had built over the past 4 years. I won. Not just an honorable mention or a consolation prize. I won first place. $5,000 in seed funding, 6 months of mentorship and connections to potential clients who actually wanted to work with me. When they announced my name, I felt something I had never felt before: pride. Pure, uncomplicated pride in something I had done entirely on my own. I got home Saturday evening at 7 o'clock, still buzzing with adrenaline and success. The house was dark, except for a light in the kitchen. I walked in with my certificate and my winner's check ready to share my news. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table, her face like stone. "Where have you been?" she asked, her voice ice cold. "At the entrepreneurship program. I left a note. I told you about it weeks ago." "You deliberately defied us. You left your sister without help during the most important week of her life. Do you have any idea how selfish you are?" I stood there holding my certificate, feeling my moment of triumph dissolve into the familiar acid of family disapproval. "I won," I said quietly. "I won the pitch competition, $5,000 in mentorship." My mother glanced at the certificate like it was a grocery receipt. "That's nice. Now your sister is upstairs crying because half her gift bags aren't finished and the party is tomorrow. You'll spend tonight and tomorrow morning fixing what you should have been here to do all week." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my certificate in her face and demand that she see me, really see me and what I had accomplished. Instead, I walked upstairs past Morgana's room where I could hear her on the phone laughing with friends, clearly not crying, and went to my own room. I locked the door, opened my laptop, and deposited that check into my secret bank account. Then I got to work on my business plan, ignoring the knocking on my door and the demands that I come help with gift bags. That night marked a turning point. I stopped hoping they would notice me. I stopped craving their approval. I channeled everything into my business. Within 6 months, I had registered my LLC using Mrs. Patterson's address as my business location so my parents wouldn't find out. Within a year, I had 10 consistent clients and was making more money than my father brought home from his struggling consulting firm. By the time I graduated high school, I had $30,000 in my business account and another $15,000 in investments. College was supposed to be my escape, but my parents had other plans. They had spent Morgana's college fund, the one my grandparents had set up, on her modeling career and social media presence. When it came time for her to apply to colleges, there was nothing left. My college fund, smaller but still substantial, suddenly became community property.
You can go to community college.
My father announced one evening during my senior year of high school. It's cheaper and you can live at home. We need your college fund to send Morgana to NYU. She's been accepted to their media studies program. This is a huge opportunity for her. I've been accepted to 3 universities, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I have scholarship offers, I just need help with room and board. Community college is perfectly respectable, my mother said. You're a smart girl. You'll do fine anywhere. Morgana needs to be in New York to build her network. You understand, don't you? I understood perfectly. I understood that my future would always be sacrificed for Morgana's present. So I made another choice. I accepted a full scholarship to a state university 3 hours away that covered tuition, room, and board. I would have to work to cover other expenses, but I would be free. When I told my parents, they were furious that I was abandoning the family, but they couldn't actually stop me since they weren't paying for it. College was the first time I felt like I could breathe. I worked my consulting business from my dorm room, growing it steadily. I took every finance and business course I could. I interned at investment firms during the summers instead of coming home. I built relationships with professors who became mentors and advocates. By my junior year, I had hired my first employee, Marcus, a sophomore, with a gift for data analysis. By senior year, I had 3 employees and was pulling in 6 figures in revenue. I went home as little as possible, usually just for major holidays. Every visit was the same. Morgana would hold court, showing off her latest Instagram posts and talking about meetings with potential sponsors that never materialized. My parents would fawn over her every word. I would sit quietly, eat my meal, and leave as soon as politely possible. They never asked about school, about my plans, about my life. The few times I tried to share something, the conversation would immediately swing back to Morgana. After graduation, I faced another decision. I could move anywhere, start fresh in a new city where nobody knew me, but something stubborn in me refused to run. Instead, I moved back to my hometown and rented a small office space for my growing business. I needed a place to live, and apartments were expensive. When my mother called and offered me my old room back, just until you get on your feet, I accepted, but only because it was strategic. I could save more money, invest more aggressively, and build my business faster without rent eating into my capital. I convinced myself I could handle it, that I was strong enough now to withstand their dismissal. And I was handling it for the most part. I kept my head down, worked long hours at my office and in my room. I barely interacted with the family except at those mandatory Sunday dinners. But over the following 2 years, as my business exploded and Morgana's influencer dreams stagnated, the tension in the house grew. My parents never asked what I did all day. They assumed I had some boring office job, some entry-level position that barely covered my expenses. When I bought a nice car, they assumed I had taken out a massive loan. When I wore expensive clothes to business meetings, they thought I was being irresponsible with credit cards. The truth was so far outside their frame of reference that they couldn't even conceive of it. Meanwhile, Morgana's facade was cracking. She had graduated from NYU with mediocre grades and no real job prospects. She had moved back home, claiming she needed to focus on building her brand. She spent her days taking photos, editing content, and buying followers in increasingly desperate attempts to appear successful. My parents funded all of it, believing her promises that she was on the verge of major sponsorship deals. I watched it all from my room, where I was managing a portfolio of clients that now included several Fortune 500 companies. I had 7 full-time employees working remotely. I was pulling in over $200,000 a month in revenue. I had investment properties in 2 states, and nobody in my family had a clue. The pressure had been building for months before that final Sunday dinner. Morgana had become increasingly aggressive about needing my room. She would accidentally walk in during my work calls. She would move my things, claiming she was just tidying up. She started telling people at parties that she was about to launch her studio and that her family was so supportive in making space for her dreams. My mother had started making comments about how long I had been living at home, how it was time for me to launch and become independent, completely unaware that I was more financially independent than anyone else in the house. My father had become more critical, finding fault with everything from how I dressed to how much time I spent in my room. The message was clear: I was taking up space that Morgana needed, and it was time for me to go. 3 weeks before the ultimatum dinner, Morgana had done something that crossed a line even I hadn't anticipated. I came home from a meeting to find her in my room with a tape measure mapping out where she would put her equipment. She had been in my file cabinet, had been through my papers. She hadn't found anything truly damaging because I kept all my important business documents in a safe deposit box at the bank, but the violation was absolute. "Get out of my room," I had said, my voice shaking with anger. She had looked at me with such casual disdain, such complete dismissal of my right to privacy or boundaries. "Relax, Alexis. I'm just planning ahead. Mom and Dad said I could start getting ready for the transition. You know this is happening. Why fight it?" "Because this is my space. I pay rent here." That was a lie. My parents had never asked me for rent, probably because they assumed I couldn't afford it. Morgana laughed at that cruel sound I knew so well. "Oh, please. You're living here out of charity. We all know you can barely afford your car payment. This room is wasted on you. I'm going to do something important with it. I'm building a brand. What are you building? A pile of boring paperwork nobody cares about." I had walked out rather than say something I couldn't take back. But that night, I started planning. I called Ruth Davies, a real estate agent I had met at a networking event. "Ruth, this is Alexis Thorne. Remember you mentioned you keep a list of properties that might interest investors. Do you have anything in the Oak Grove neighborhood?" Oak Grove was my parents' neighborhood. Ruth had laughed thinking I was joking until I told her I was serious. She promised to look into it. 2 weeks before the ultimatum, Ruth called me back. "I have something perfect. 415 Oak Grove Lane. 2-story colonial 4 bedrooms completely renovated. The owners are relocating for work and need to sell fast. It's listed at $675,000, but I think they'd take $650,000 for a quick close. And here's the interesting part. It's directly across the street from 412 Oak Grove Lane. Isn't that your parents' address?" I felt a smile spread across my face. "When can I see it?" We toured the house the next day. It was perfect. Hardwood floors, updated kitchen master suite with a balcony that looked directly at my parents' house. Large windows that would let in beautiful natural light. A finished basement that would make an ideal office space. And most importantly, it was mine for the taking. "I want it," I told Ruth. "Let's write an offer for asking price all cash for 60% conventional mortgage for the rest close in 30 days. Ruth stared at me. "Alexis, I need to ask. You're 25 years old. How are you planning to finance this?" I pulled out my phone and showed her my business banking app. She went pale when she saw the balance. "I've been preparing for this for a long time," I told her. "Let's make it happen." The week before the ultimatum dinner, I met with a mortgage broker named Claire Dubois, a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in high-net-worth clients and unconventional situations. I brought her 3 years of business tax returns, my personal financial statements, and letters from my top clients. She spread the documents across her desk and studied them in silence for several minutes. Then she looked up at me with an expression somewhere between impressed and astonished. "Ms. Thorne, you're 25 years old, and you've built a consulting firm generating over $2.5 million in annual revenue. Your personal net worth is over $3 million. Your credit score is 798. Why exactly are you living with your parents?" "That's complicated," I said. "Can you get me approved for a mortgage?" She laughed. "Can I get you approved? Honey banks are going to fight over you. With your financials, you could buy 3 of these houses. Let me make some calls." She had my pre-approval within 24 hours. I was cleared for up to $850,000 with a 20% down payment, though I planned to put down much more. Everything was in place. All I needed was the final trigger, the moment when I could walk away knowing I had given them every chance to see me, to value me, to treat me like I mattered. That moment came at Sunday dinner with my father's fist on the table and his ultimatum ringing in my ears. After I walked out of that dining room and locked myself in my bedroom, I sat on my bed for a long moment, just breathing. The rage was there, hot and sharp, but underneath it was something unexpected relief. They had finally done it. They had finally pushed hard enough that I could leave without guilt, without second-guessing, without wondering if I was being too sensitive or too demanding. I opened my laptop and looked at my dashboard. The numbers glowed back at me in the darkness: $3.2 million in liquid assets, $847,000 in investment accounts, $2.7 million in revenue for the current fiscal year. I had built this. Every single dollar I had earned without their help, without their knowledge, without their approval. And now I was going to use it to build something they couldn't ignore. I pulled out my phone and texted Ruth. "I'm ready. Let's close this week if possible." Her response came within minutes. "I'll make it happen. Congratulations on your new home." Next, I texted Claire. "What's the fastest we can close?" "With your financials, if everyone hustles, we can do it in 5 days. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow." Then I opened my laptop and started drafting emails. One to Marcus, my assistant, asking him to clear my schedule for Thursday and Friday. One to my accountant requesting a certified letter of my business revenues and assets. One to my lawyer asking him to review the purchase agreement. I was covering every base, eliminating every possible obstacle. The next morning, Monday, I got up before dawn and went for a run. I needed to clear my head to think through every step of what I was about to do. This wasn't just about buying a house. This was about making a statement so loud and so undeniable that my family would never be able to dismiss me again. But it was also about freedom. Real freedom. The kind that came from owing nothing to anyone, from building a life entirely on my own terms. I was on my 3rd mile when my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Are you okay? Dad was really angry last night. Mom's been in a mood all morning." I stopped running and called him. He picked up immediately. "Alexis, what's going on? They're acting weird. Mom keeps talking about packing up your things and Morgana's been in your room again." "Don't worry about it," I told him. "I'm handling it. But Ethan, I need to ask you something. When I leave, are you going to be okay?" There was a long pause. "You're really leaving?" "Yeah, I am, but I need to know you'll be all right." "I'll be fine," he said, and I could hear the lie in his voice. Ethan was 19, caught between his loyalty to me and his dependence on our parents for college tuition. "But Alexis, where are you going to go? Do you have enough money saved I could help? I have some savings from my summer job." My heart cracked a little. Sweet Ethan offering me his summer job savings when I had enough money to put him through college twice over. "Keep your money," I told him. "I'm going to be fine. Better than fine. Just trust me, okay?" "Okay," he said quietly. "I trust you." After the call, I continued my run, but my mind was racing faster than my feet. Ethan. I hadn't fully considered how my leaving would affect him. He was the only one in that family who had ever really cared about me. The only one who noticed when I was upset, who asked about my day, who treated me like a person rather than a disappointment or an inconvenience. I made a decision right there, jogging past the park where we used to play as kids. Whatever happened, I would make sure Ethan was taken care of. If my parents cut him off if he needed help, I would be there. Not as a victim anymore, but as someone who had the resources and the power to actually make a difference. Monday afternoon, I drove to my office, a sleek suite in a professional building downtown that my parents had never visited. My team was working on a major project for a retail client, analyzing their supply chain costs and recommending efficiency improvements. I called a meeting in the conference room. "I need to take the rest of the week off," I announced. "Personal matter. Marcus, you're in charge. Any questions or emergencies, call me, but otherwise you all know what to do." One of my analysts, Jenny, a sharp MBA graduate I had hired 6 months ago, raised her hand. "Everything okay, boss?" "Everything's great," I said and realized I meant it. "I'm buying a house. Time to stop renting and invest in real estate." The team broke into congratulations and questions about where and how big and could they come to the housewarming party. These people, my employees, knew more about my life than my own family did. They knew I ran a successful business. They respected my expertise. They valued my opinion. It was such a stark contrast to Sunday dinners at my parents' house that I felt a wave of affection for all of them. "Absolutely, there'll be a housewarming party," I promised, "once I'm settled." That evening, I went home to find Morgana had indeed been in my room again. Small things were moved. My desk had been measured. There were paint samples taped to the wall. She was marking her territory, showing me that she had already claimed this space in her mind. I carefully removed the paint samples and threw them away. Then I started a systematic inventory of everything in my room. What needed to be packed carefully, what could be moved quickly, what I could leave behind. I had accumulated less than I thought over the years, probably because some part of me had always known I would leave eventually. Tuesday morning, Ruth called with the contracts. We reviewed them over coffee at a cafe downtown, far from my parents' neighborhood. The sellers had accepted my offer immediately. All cash for 60% of the purchase price, a small conventional mortgage for the remaining 40% to keep some liquidity for my business. Close date Friday. Possession Saturday morning. This is happening fast, Ruth said, sliding the contracts across the table. Are you sure about this? That's a big commitment. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I told her, signing my name with a flourish. Tuesday afternoon, Claire called to confirm my mortgage was approved and funded. All set, Ms. Thorne. The money will be wired to escrow tomorrow. You're officially going to be a homeowner in 3 days. Wednesday was a blur of paperwork and final details. I met with the home inspector for a last walkthrough. I ordered furniture online to be delivered Saturday afternoon. I hired a cleaning service to deep clean before I moved in. I set up utilities. I bought groceries for a kitchen I didn't technically own yet. Every action was deliberate, purposeful, real. Wednesday evening, I came home to find my mother waiting for me in the kitchen again. She had developed this habit of ambushing me with conversations I didn't want to have. "Alexis, dear, we need to talk about Sunday," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I hope you understand this isn't personal. We're just trying to do what's best for Morgana's career. You've had that room for so many years, it's time to let someone else have a turn." I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "Sunday. I'll give you my answer Sunday." "Well, we're hoping you can start packing this week. Morgana wants to paint this weekend, get ready for her equipment deliveries next week." "I said Sunday, Mother!" I kept my voice level, but something in my tone must have warned her not to push because she left the kitchen without another word. Thursday morning, I woke up to a text from Morgana. "Hope you're not dragging your feet about moving out. I already ordered my equipment. It's being delivered Monday. Need the room cleared by then." I didn't respond. There was no point. In 4 days, none of this would matter anymore. Thursday afternoon, I drove to the house that would soon be mine. I stood across the street from my parents' place looking at both houses. Theirs a bit run down, the paint peeling slightly on the shutters, the lawn uneven. Mine perfect and gleaming, a statement of success that they couldn't miss. Every day they would wake up and see my house. Every day they would be reminded that I had left, that I had built something without them, that I hadn't needed them at all. Thursday night, I told Ethan. He came to my room after our parents had gone to bed, knocked softly. I let him in and locked the door behind him. "What's going on?" he asked, sitting on my bed. "You've been weird all week, distracted, and I heard Mom talking to Morgana about painters coming this weekend." I sat down next to him and took a breath. "Ethan, I'm leaving, and I'm not just moving into an apartment across town. I bought a house, the Colonial, across the street." His eyes went wide. "You bought a house? How, I mean, I know you work, but how do you have money for a house?" "I've been running my own business for 7 years, I told him. "Financial consulting. I have employees, I have clients all over the country, and I've been saving and investing since I was 14. I didn't tell anyone because—" I paused, trying to find the right words. "Because they never asked, and because I knew if they knew, they would want to take it like they took everything else." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, processing. "The house across the street," he finally said. "That's pretty bold." "They gave me an ultimatum. I'm giving them an answer they won't forget." "What about me?" he asked, his voice small. "Are you leaving me too?" "Never," I said firmly, putting my hand on his shoulder. "Ethan, you're the only one in this family who ever treated me like I mattered. My door is always open to you. Always. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me." "Got it?" "Got it," he said, and then he hugged me tight. "I'm proud of you, even if they never were." Friday morning, I woke up before dawn and went for another run. This was it. The day I became a homeowner. The day I officially became free. I ran harder than I had in months, pushing myself until my lungs burned and my legs ached, releasing years of pent-up frustration and pain with every stride. At 10 o'clock, I met Ruth and Claire at the title company. We sat around a large conference table with the sellers and their agent. I signed document after document, my hand cramping from writing my name so many times. And then finally, the title officer slid a set of keys across the table to me. "Congratulations, Ms. Thorne, you're officially a homeowner." I closed my fingers around those keys, feeling their weight, their reality. This was mine. I had earned it. I had bought it, and nobody could take it from me. Friday afternoon, I met my team at my new house. Marcus, Jenny, and two other employees, Tom and Sarah, showed up with boxes and packing supplies. We loaded up my clothes, my laptop, my files, everything I truly needed. Ethan helped running interference by taking our parents to an early dinner at their favorite restaurant on the other side of town. By Friday evening, my room at my parents' house was empty except for the furniture. I left a single note on the pillow, just like I had promised. My answer is waiting for you across the street. See you Sunday dinner. Friday night, I slept in my new house for the first time. I didn't have a bed yet, just an air mattress, but I had never slept better in my life. I lay there in the darkness looking at the ceiling of a house I owned and a life I had built, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Saturday was a whirlwind. Furniture deliveries, setting up internet organizing, my office in the basement, hanging curtains. Ruth stopped by with a housewarming gift, a beautiful framed print that said, "Home is where your story begins." Claire came by with a bottle of expensive champagne. My team came back to help me unpack and arrange furniture. By Saturday evening, the house looked lived in, warm, and undeniably mine. Saturday night, I stood on my front porch with a glass of wine, looking across the street at my parents' house. The lights were on in every room. I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. They had no idea what was coming tomorrow. Sunday morning dawned clear and cold. I dressed carefully, choosing a black blazer and gray slacks, professional and polished. I did my makeup not too much, but enough to look put together. I gathered my documents, business registration, tax returns, financial statements, the deed to my house, and most importantly, the evidence I had gathered from my father's computer that I had saved on that thumb drive weeks ago. Everything was in a leather portfolio that my first big client had given me as a thank you gift. At noon, I walked across the street to the house where I had grown up. I rang the doorbell and waited, my heart pounding, but my hands steady. My mother answered, her smile brittle and victorious. She thought she had won. She thought I was coming back to capitulate, to beg for more time to plead my case. "Alexis, come in, dear. We've been expecting you." The family was gathered in the living room, arranged like they were posing for a portrait. My father in his armchair trying to look authoritative. My mother on the sofa, her hands folded primly in her lap. Morgana sprawled across the love seat, scrolling through her phone with that bored expression that said she couldn't be bothered with this drama. And Ethan standing by the window, his face tense with worry, but his eyes encouraging when they met mine. The coffee table was covered with paint swatches and furniture catalogs and fabric samples. They had already started planning their victory celebration, redecorating my room before I had even officially surrendered it. There was even a bottle of champagne on ice ready to toast to Morgana's new studio. "So," my father began, settling back in his chair with the air of a king granting an audience. "Have you found a place? I'm sure you understand this is for the best. Morgana's career is really taking off and she needs the space. We're all very excited about her new opportunities." I set my portfolio down on the coffee table directly on top of Morgana's design magazines. "I have found a place," I said calmly, my voice steady and clear. "Actually, I've moved already. Wednesday was my first night in my new home." My mother's eyebrows rose slightly. "You found a rental that fast?" "Well, that's good. Dear. Though you know how expensive renting can be these days, especially on your salary. You'll probably be back here within 6 months once you realize how much money you're wasting on rent. The market is very tough right now. We might even let you have the guest room when you come back, though. Of course, Morgana's studio will be in your old room by then." I opened my portfolio, slowly, deliberately building the moment. "I didn't rent," I said, placing the first document on the table. "I bought a house. This is the deed. The house is fully mine with a small mortgage that I'm paying off ahead of schedule. The purchase price was $675,000. I paid 60% down in cash." The room went absolutely silent. The only sound was the ticking of the antique clock on the mantel, each second stretching out like an eternity. My father leaned forward, squinting at the document like he was trying to decode a foreign language. My mother's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips, suspended in time. Morgana looked up from her phone for the first time since I had arrived, her eyes narrowing as she tried to process what I had just said. "You bought a house," my father said slowly, each word separated by a pause, as if he was testing them out to see if they made sense. "How you don't have that kind of money? You can barely afford your car payments. This has to be some kind of mistake. Maybe you signed something you didn't understand. Did someone trick you into something? Actually, I have never missed a single payment on anything in my entire life, I replied, my voice steady as steel. And I paid 60% down on the house in cash. That's $405,000 in cash wired from my business account. Would you like to see the bank statements, the closing documents, the wire transfer receipts? I have all of them right here. I pulled out the next document, my business financial statement, the one my accountant had certified just 2 days ago. I own a financial consulting firm, Thorne Financial Consulting. I registered the LLC 7 years ago when I was 18. We closed last fiscal year with over $2.7 million in revenue. This fiscal year, we're on track to exceed $3.1 million. I have 7 full-time employees, clients in 4 countries, and we've been profitable since year 2. I paid for my house with money I earned myself from a business I built in that bedroom you wanted me to give up. I laid the financial statement on the table next to the deed. The numbers were all there, undeniable and real. Revenue expenses, profit margins, tax payments. Everything documented and certified. My mother's coffee cup hit the floor. The crash of porcelain on hardwood was like a gunshot in the silent room. Brown liquid spread across the cream carpet in a slow stain, but nobody moved to clean it up. They were all frozen, staring at the documents like they were written in hieroglyphics, trying to make their brains accept something that contradicted everything they thought they knew about me. "This is impossible!" My father sputtered, his face turning red. "You said you work in finance. You never said you owned a company. You never said you were making millions. If this was true, you would have told us. You would have shown us. This has to be some kind of fraud or scam. Nobody makes that kind of money at 25. You never asked," I said, simply letting the words hang in the air between us. "Not once in 7 years did you ask me how my business was doing. You never asked how my work was going. You never asked what I did all day. You assumed I was failing because I didn't brag about it. You assumed I was barely surviving because I didn't demand your attention like Morgana does. You saw what you wanted to see, the boring, unsuccessful daughter who was just taking up space in your house." I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and handed it to Morgana. "You wanted proof. Here, look at it. That's just one of my business accounts. There are 3 more. I watched her face as she scrolled through the balance, watched it go from skeptical to shocked to something that might have been jealousy or rage or both. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through months of deposits, seeing the steady flow of money that represented years of work she had never noticed. "This can't be real," she whispered, but her voice had lost its usual confidence. "You're making this up. You photoshopped this or something." "Call the bank if you don't believe me," I said, taking my phone back. "The number's right there. Ask them to verify the balance. I'll wait." Nobody called. They knew it was real. They could see it in my face, in my posture, in the calm certainty with which I presented each document. This wasn't a fantasy or a lie. This was reality crashing down on their carefully constructed narrative about who I was and what I was capable of. "Where is this house?" my mother asked, her voice barely a whisper, like she was afraid of the answer. I walked to the window, the one that looked out over the front yard and the street beyond. I pointed across the street at the beautiful colonial that had been sitting empty for months. The one they had all commented was overpriced and would never sell. "Right there, that colonial you said nobody would ever pay that much for. The one you said was a waste of money for its size. The one you dismissed every time you drove past it. I paid asking price in cash. I've been sleeping in my new master bedroom for the past 4 nights, and I have to say the view from my window is quite interesting. I can see this entire house perfectly." My father stood up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. He walked to the window like he was in a trance, looked out at my house, then back at me, then back at the house. His face went through several colors before settling on an alarming shade of purple. "You did this to spite us. You bought that house just to throw your success in our faces, just to prove some kind of point." "No," I said calmly, turning to face them all. "I bought that house because when you gave me an ultimatum about giving up my room or leaving this house, I chose freedom. The house across the street was available, perfectly located for my needs, since my office is in this neighborhood and well within my budget. The fact that you can see it from your window every single day is just a convenient bonus. Every morning when you wake up, you'll see it. Every night when you come home, you'll see it. You'll never be able to forget that I left and I thrived." Morgana launched herself off the love seat like she had been stung. "This is bullshit. This is so typical of you, always trying to make everything about yourself. You're so selfish. You're supposed to help family. We're your family. When family needs help, you help them." "Am I?" I asked quietly, letting the question hang in the air. "Am I really your family? Because family doesn't steal a 14-year-old's savings to buy camera equipment. Family doesn't drain a college fund to pay for fake followers and bot engagement. Family doesn't threaten to destroy important documents when they don't get their way. Family doesn't give ultimatums about giving up your personal space. You want to talk about family? Let's talk about family." I pulled out the last set of documents from my portfolio, the evidence I had been saving for this moment. Printouts of my father's bank statements, his loan applications, his credit card bills. Emails from Morgana to brands and agencies. Everything I had copied from his computer that morning weeks ago. Everything I had verified and documented. "You're in debt," I said, laying out the bank statements one by one like I was dealing cards. "Serious debt. $180,000 between credit cards, personal loans, and a second mortgage on this house. And I know exactly where that money went." I highlighted each transfer to Morgana with a red pen drawing lines between the statements. $15,000 for camera equipment, $8,000 for designer clothes, $22,000 for a car lease on that Mercedes Morgana drives, $5,000 here for a professional photography session, $10,000 there for a social media consultant, $3,000 a month for 6 months for a brand management agency that produced exactly 0 results. Every time Morgana said she needed something for her career, you gave it to her, even when you couldn't afford it, even when it meant borrowing against this house, even when it meant taking out credit cards at 22% interest. My mother's face had gone chalk white, all the blood draining away as she stared at the evidence of their financial disaster spread across the coffee table. Where did you get these? "It doesn't matter how I found out," I said, though we both knew she was really asking how I had accessed private financial documents. "What matters is that you funded a fantasy. You poured almost $200,000 into an illusion. And here's the really interesting part." I pulled out another stack of papers, Morgana's correspondence with brands and talent agencies. "Morgana, tell them the truth. Tell them how many real followers you actually have. Tell them about all those brand deals that were supposedly pending." Morgana's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Her face had gone blotchy with rage and shame, red patches appearing on her neck and cheeks. "You have 19,723 followers," I said, pulling out a detailed analytics report I had commissioned from a social media audit company. "I paid for a professional analysis of your account. 68% of them are bot accounts. Your engagement rate is 1.2%. The industry standard for a legitimate influencer is at least 4%. Brands look for 5 or higher. You're not even close." I pulled out more emails. "Every brand deal you claimed was pending, I found your emails. You sent cold inquiries to brands. Most never responded. The ones that did respond either sent automatic rejection templates, or in 3 cases they ran fraud checks on your account and flagged it for buying followers. One agency actually sent a cease and desist letter asking you to stop claiming you were represented by them." I looked at my parents, who were still staring at the documents in shock. "You sacrificed everything for this. My childhood savings, my college fund, your retirement accounts. You took out loans you can't afford. You maxed out credit cards. You put a second mortgage on your house. And for what?" So Morgana could pretend to be something she's not. "Those numbers are wrong," Morgana said, her voice shrill and desperate. "Those companies don't know how to calculate engagement properly. I have 50,000 followers. I have brand deals in the pipeline. I'm about to blow up. This is all it's just timing. Everything's about to happen for me." I pulled out my phone again, opened Instagram, and showed them her profile. The real numbers right there in black and white. "These are your real numbers, Morgana. 19,723 followers, 47 likes on your last post, 3 comments, and 2 of them are spam bots. This isn't about timing. This isn't about being on the verge of success. This is about a lie that you've been telling yourself and that mom and dad have been funding because they wanted to believe it too. I pulled out one final document, and this one was the most damaging of all. This is from a talent agency you applied to last month. Elite Talent Management. They ran a comprehensive fraud check on your account because they do that for all potential clients. They flagged your account for suspicious activity. They found evidence of purchased followers, purchased likes, purchased comments. They rejected your application and put you on an industry blacklist that talent agencies share to warn each other about fraudulent influencers. I slid the rejection letter across the table. It was brutal in its honesty, detailing exactly why Morgana had been rejected and warning that any attempt to work with their company in the future would result in legal action. "You're not about to blow up Morgana," I said, my voice softer now, but no less firm. "You're about to blow over. This house of cards you've built, this fantasy you've been living, it's collapsing, and you've taken mom and dad down with you." The silence that followed was deafening, heavy with shock and denial, and the slow, painful realization that everything they thought they knew was wrong. My father sat back down in his chair, looking suddenly old and defeated. My mother was crying quiet tears running down her face, probably more from shock than actual remorse. Morgana stood frozen, her phone still in her hand, her whole identity shattered in the space of 10 minutes. "You've been bleeding yourselves dry for a lie," I continued, my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. "You sacrificed my childhood, my college fund, my dignity, all for someone who was more interested in appearing successful than actually being successful. And when I actually became successful quietly and without fanfare, you didn't even notice. You were too busy applauding the performance to see the real achievement happening in the room you wanted to take away from me." "We're your parents," my father finally said, his voice hoarse and broken. "You're supposed to help us. We raised you. We fed you. We clothed you. We put a roof over your head. You owe us. After everything we did for you, you owe us." Something inside me went cold and still. "I owe you nothing," I said, and I realized as I said it that I truly, completely believed it. The guilt I had carried for years, the sense of obligation, the feeling that maybe I was being ungrateful or selfish, all of it evaporated in that moment. You provided food and shelter, which is the legal minimum requirement of parenthood. It's not something you get extra credit for. You didn't support my dreams. You didn't encourage my ambitions. You didn't even notice my achievements. You were so busy creating a showcase child in Morgana that you completely overlooked the one who was actually succeeding. I began gathering my documents, sliding them back into my portfolio with calm, deliberate movements. "Everything I have, I built myself. Despite you, not because of you. Every dollar I earned alone. Every client I won on my own merit. Every success I achieved without your help or your blessing. And you know what? That makes it even sweeter. Because I know absolutely and completely that I did this. Me. Not your money, not your connections, not your support. Me." "So that's it," my mother said through her tears, her voice taking on that manipulative edge I knew so well. "You're just going to abandon us after everything we've done for you when we need you most, when we're in financial trouble and you're sitting on millions. What kind of daughter does that?" "The kind of daughter you created," I said flatly. "You taught me not to depend on anyone. You taught me that in this family I was on my own. You taught me that my needs would always come last. Congratulations! I learned those lessons very well. I'm just applying them now." "What about family values?" my father demanded, trying to summon some of his old authority. "What about helping each other? What about being there for family in times of need?" "You mean like how you were there for me when I needed money for that coding camp, or when I won the entrepreneurship competition and you didn't even look at my certificate? Or when Morgana went through my room and my savings and my privacy and you told me to be reasonable? Those family values." "We made mistakes," my mother admitted, actually sounding sincere for the first time. "We didn't see what you were doing. We didn't understand, but we can change. We can make this right. Don't throw away your whole family over past mistakes." "I'm not throwing away my family," I said quietly. "I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing a life where I don't need anyone's approval to know my worth. I'm choosing freedom from always being the forgotten daughter, the responsible one who gets no recognition, the safe backup plan, while all the attention goes to the golden child. I looked at each of them one last time. My father deflated and defeated, his authority shattered. My mother crying her calculated tears, already trying to figure out how to manipulate this situation to her advantage. Morgana seething with impotent rage and wounded pride, her carefully constructed fantasy exposed as fraud. And then I looked at Ethan, who had been silent through this entire confrontation. He met my eyes, and to my surprise, he smiled. A small, sad smile, but genuine. "Can I come visit your new house?" he asked quietly, and in that moment, I loved him more than I ever had before. "Any time." I told him, my voice warm for the first time since I had walked into this room. "The door is always open for you, Ethan. Always. You're welcome anytime for anything. You want to study there? Come over. You want to just hang out and get away from here? Come over. You need help with anything, and I mean anything, you call me first. Got it?" "Got it," he said, and then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He crossed the room and hugged me tight. "I'm proud of you," he whispered in my ear. "Even if they never were, I always knew you were going to do something amazing." I hugged him back, feeling tears prick my eyes for the first time since this confrontation started. "Thank you," I whispered back. "That means everything." When we separated, I picked up my portfolio and walked toward the door. I had said everything I needed to say. There was nothing left here for me except old pain and older resentments. "Wait," my father said, standing up. "We need to talk about this. We need to figure out a plan. You can't just walk away when your family is in crisis." "Watch me," I said, my hand on the doorknob. "You gave me an ultimatum about my room. I made my choice. I chose freedom. I chose self-respect. I chose a life where I don't have to justify my existence or apologize for taking up space." "You're making a mistake," my mother called out as I opened the door. "You're going to regret this. Family is all you have in the end. You'll come crawling back and it might be too late. We might not be here to forgive you." I paused in the doorway and looked back at her. "You're right about one thing. Family is all you have in the end. But family isn't just about blood. It's about respect and support and actually caring about each other. The family I'm building across the street has more love and loyalty in it than I ever found in this house. So no, I won't be crawling back. This is goodbye." Then I walked out of that house for the last time as the daughter who would take whatever they dished out. I crossed the street to my own house, climbed the steps to my porch, and turned to look back one last time. They were all standing at the window watching me. My father looked angry and baffled. My mother looked calculating, probably already planning her next manipulation. Morgana looked destroyed, her whole identity crumbling. And Ethan looked hopeful, maybe seeing a path forward for himself, too. I raised my hand in a brief wave. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation. Just acknowledgement. Then I walked inside my house, closed the door behind me, and locked it with a satisfying click. The next few weeks were even more satisfying than I had imagined. On Monday morning, a large floral arrangement was delivered to my house, a congratulations gift from my biggest client who had heard about my house purchase. The delivery truck parked right in front, impossible to miss from my parents' window. The arrangement was enormous, probably 3 feet tall, with lilies and roses and orchids, the kind of display that cost several $100s. The delivery person had to make 2 trips to bring it all to my door. On Tuesday, a furniture delivery arrived, a custom office setup for my homework space, all glass and chrome and professional looking. The delivery truck took up half the street, and the movers carried in desk after desk, chair after chair, all premium pieces that screamed success. I saw my mother watching from her window, and I gave her a friendly wave. On Wednesday, my cleaning service arrived to deep clean the entire house, even though it was already spotless. They came in a van with the company logo splashed across the side, Elite Home Services, for discerning clients. 2 hours later, a landscaping crew showed up to refresh the front garden, planting new flowers and laying fresh mulch, making my yard look like something out of a magazine. On Thursday, a home security company installed a state-of-the-art system with cameras and smart locks and a doorbell that recorded everyone who approached. The technician's van was parked out front for 4 hours, another visible sign of my investment in my property. On Friday, I hosted a small gathering for my employees. Just pizza and beer and a celebration of the successful quarter we had just closed. But from across the street, it must have looked like I was throwing a party, like I had friends and colleagues and a whole life they knew nothing about, which, of course, I did. Meanwhile, across the street, things were falling apart exactly as I had predicted. Morgana's desperate attempt to buy more followers after being confronted was immediately noticed by Instagram's algorithm. Her account was temporarily suspended for suspicious activity, and when it came back online, half her followers were gone, wiped out in Instagram's bot purge. She was down to less than 10,000 followers, and even those were mostly inactive accounts. Two brands that had actually been considering working with her, legitimate companies that had reached out based on her application, pulled out when they ran background checks and found the rejection letter from Elite Talent Management. In the influencer world, reputation is everything, and Morgana's was destroyed. A local lifestyle magazine that had planned to feature her as a rising influencer in their 30 Under 30 issue canceled the profile when their fact-checker discovered the truth about her follower count. Worse, they published a different article instead, The Dark Side of Influencer Culture, How Fake Followers Are Damaging Brand Trust. While they didn't name Morgana directly, anyone who knew her could read between the lines. My father's application for an additional loan to consolidate their debt was denied within a week. The bank had looked at their debt-to-income ratio, seen the second mortgage, reviewed the credit card balances, and determined they were too high a risk. Without an influx of cash, they couldn't keep up with their payments. Late notices started arriving. Collection calls began. I knew all of this because Ethan kept me updated. He would come over for dinner twice a week, always looking relieved to escape the tension across the street. He told me about the arguments, the blame game, the desperate scrambling to find a solution. My father blamed my mother for indulging Morgana. My mother blamed my father for not making enough money. Morgana blamed me for sabotaging her career by exposing the truth. It's like watching a building collapse in slow motion, Ethan told me over spaghetti one evening. Everyone's trying to prop it up, but it's already falling. Dad's talking about selling the house. Mom's looking for a job. I don't know what Morgana's doing. She barely leaves her room anymore. How are you doing? I asked him because that was what mattered to me. I'm okay, he said. Actually, I'm better than okay. Seeing you stand up to them made me realize I can too. I've been looking at transfer opportunities to state schools with better engineering programs. I might not stay at community college after all. If you need help with applications or anything, let me know, I offered. And Ethan. That offer I made about helping you, I meant it. If they cut you off or if you need support, I'm here. 3 weeks after my Declaration of Independence, I was sitting on my porch with my morning coffee when I saw a real estate agent's car pull up to my parents' house. A woman in a business suit got out, took some measurements of the front yard, and then hammered a sign into the lawn for sale. My mother stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen her. She caught me watching, and her face went through several expressions: shame, anger, defiance, and finally something that might have been regret. Then she quickly went inside. The house sold within 2 weeks, but not for the price they wanted. In a seller's market, they should have gotten top dollar, but the second mortgage made them desperate, and everyone could smell it. They accepted an offer $40,000 below asking price just to get out from under the debt. Even with the sale, they would barely break even after paying off their mortgages and credit cards. I watched the whole process from my front porch, visible and present, but deliberately neutral. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. I just lived my life publicly and successfully while theirs fell apart across the street. 6 weeks after that Sunday dinner, moving day arrived for my parents. Morgana left first early in the morning, her car packed with designer bags and ring lights and all the equipment they had bought her, heading to a cheap apartment complex on the far side of town. Her new place was a studio barely 400 square feet in a building that had bars on the windows. The golden child diminished. Then my parents loading their sedan and a small moving truck with whatever they couldn't fit in their new 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. My father looked aged, diminished, his shoulders hunched under the weight of failure. My mother kept her chin up, trying to maintain dignity even as she packed up her life into cardboard boxes. Ethan was the last to leave. He had decided to transfer to a state university across the state starting in the fall semester. Until then, he would stay with our aunt in another city, working a summer job and saving money. He stopped at my house before he left his car, packed with everything that mattered to him. We stood on my porch, looking across the street at the empty house, the for sale sign now marked with a sold rider.
You did the right thing.
He said, pulling me into a long hug. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it out loud. You were in an impossible position, I told him, hugging him back tight. But you chose right when it mattered. That's what counts.
I'm going to miss having you close by, he admitted. But I'm excited too. Excited to build something of my own like you did.
You're going to do amazing things, I told him with absolute certainty. And I'll be here cheering you on every step of the way. Call me anytime. Visit whenever you want. You always have a home here.
I know,
He said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for showing me it was possible to choose yourself. Thank you for being the example I needed. After his car pulled away, I stood on my porch alone watching the movers finish loading the truck across the street. The new owners, a young family with 3 kids and 2 dogs, would be moving in next week. I had met them during one of their walkthroughs, introduced myself as their new neighbor. They seemed lovely, normal, the kind of family that actually cared about each other and supported each other's dreams. 6 months later, my business had grown even more. I was featured in a local business magazine as one of the 30 under 30 rising entrepreneurs changing the game. The article included a photo of me in my home office, the big windows showing my neighborhood in the background. I framed a copy and hung it in my entryway, visible to anyone who came through my door. More importantly, I had started something I was truly proud of, the Thorn Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing scholarships and business education to young people from difficult family situations. Kids who needed someone to believe in them when their own families wouldn't. I had put $100,000 of my own money into it and was actively fundraising. Our first scholarship recipient was a 17-year-old girl whose parents had spent her college fund on her brother's failed business venture. She was going to study computer science at a top university, all expenses paid. My house had become exactly what I needed it to be, a sanctuary and a statement. I had furnished it carefully, each piece chosen because I loved it, not because someone told me it was acceptable or appropriate. My office had those big windows overlooking the street, and sometimes I would sit there in the evening sipping wine, watching the neighborhood settle in for the night, feeling grateful for every choice that had led me to this moment. Ethan visited, often driving up from his university on long weekends. He was thriving, having discovered a passion for mechanical engineering and a talent for robotics. We talked on the phone weekly, real conversations about life and dreams and futures. He told me our parents rarely mentioned me anymore, except when they were complaining about their own financial struggles. They had suggested more than once that I should help them since I was so rich now. But Ethan always shut down those conversations. You don't owe them anything, he would tell them, and I loved him for it. She built that herself, and you didn't believe in her until it was too late. Morgana had gotten a job at a call center answering customer service calls for a national retailer. It was honest work, but it was a far cry from the influencer lifestyle she had imagined. Her Instagram account was still active, but she posted rarely now, and her engagement was nearly zero. The last time Ethan checked, she had fewer than 5,000 followers and was posting generic motivational quotes instead of the carefully curated lifestyle content she used to create. The dream was dead, and she was finally living in reality. My parents had both found work. My father's business had finally officially failed after years of barely surviving, and he had taken a job as a financial manager for someone else's company. The irony was not lost on me that he was now working for someone else, taking orders, following someone else's vision. My mother worked part-time at a boutique in a mall, selling clothes to women who could afford the things she used to buy without thinking about the price. They were managing, but barely. They were making their rent, paying their bills, slowly chipping away at the remaining debt. But the lifestyle they had lived, the image they had projected, was gone forever. And every time they thought about it, every time they regretted their choices, they could remember the house across the street from their old place, the one their daughter bought while they were busy dismissing her. I felt no guilt about any of it. None. What I felt was peace. The kind of deep, bone-level peace that comes from knowing you made the right choice no matter how hard it was. The peace that comes from building a life on your own terms. The peace that comes from looking in the mirror and genuinely liking the person looking back. On the 1-year anniversary of that fateful Sunday dinner, I hosted a proper housewarming party. My house was filled with friends, colleagues, clients, and people who genuinely cared about me. Marcus from work gave a toast to Alexis, who proved that success is the best revenge. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. But that wasn't quite right, and I said so. Success isn't revenge, I told my gathered friends. Success is freedom. Success is validation. Success is proof that I was worth something whether my family acknowledged it or not. The revenge, if you want to call it that, is simply living well. Living authentically. Living without needing anyone's permission or approval. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, I stood on my porch one more time, looking across the street at the house I had grown up in. The lights were warm and welcoming now, filled with a family that loved each other, that supported each other's dreams, that celebrated each other's successes. It looked nothing like the cold, competitive household I remembered. Ruth stopped by as she was leaving the last guest to go. She stood beside me, following my gaze across the street. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Buying this house? Making such a dramatic statement." I thought about it for a moment, really considered the question. Then I smiled. "Not for a second. This house represents everything I am and everything I built. It's not about revenge or proving them wrong. It's about proving to myself that I was right, that I was worth it, that my dreams were valid and my work was valuable and my success was real, regardless of whether they ever acknowledged it." "You're going to inspire a lot of people," Ruth said, squeezing my shoulder. "Young people who feel unseen in their own families, people who think they have to dim their light to make others comfortable. You're showing them another way." After she left, I stayed on the porch for a while longer, wrapped in a blanket against the cool evening air. I thought about everything that had happened, everything that had led me to this moment. The stolen savings, the missed opportunities, the dismissive comments, the ultimatum, and then the decision, the action, the follow-through. They had told me to give up my room to make space for someone they deemed more important. So I had built a company in that room and bought a house across the street. They had told me to know my place, and I had made my place at the top. They had told me family comes first, and I had created a family of people who chose to love and support me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Success really is built in quiet rooms while others are performing. I had spent years working in silence while Morgana had been performing for an imaginary audience. In the end, only one of us had built something real. Only one of us had created something that lasted. Only one of us was free. Have you ever had to make a choice between family loyalty and your own well-being? Have you ever been the forgotten one, the overlooked one, the one expected to sacrifice without recognition? Drop a comment below and let me know your story. And if this resonated with you, if you've ever felt like the invisible child or the taken-for-granted sibling, hit that like button and subscribe. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who refuse to see your worth. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living a life so full and vibrant that their opinion stops mattering. What do you think? Was I right to cut ties, or should family always come first, no matter what? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding your power and building your freedom.